I'll get to my assessment of the J.D. Vance-Tim Walz vice presidential debate in a bit. But first, I want to show you this CNN focus group of fourth graders, because this is just hilarious and awesome. And we'll tell you where this election is heading. CNN was not expecting this.
It'd be good for us to have a black woman as president for the first time in history.
Yeah.
But my vote's kind of still on Trump.
Holy crap, CNN wasn't expecting this.
Which one of these two candidates do you think is more likely to do bad things?
Oh, convicted felon against a liar. Oh, who do I pick? I'm going to say Trump because he's a convicted felon.
Do you think it's okay for somebody who is a convicted felon to become president of the United States?
Yes.
Many children were also very aware of the first assassination attempt on former President Trump.
And which one do you think is tougher?
Donald
Trump?
Because he did survive a gunshot.
And does anything else make him tougher, do you think? Or was it mostly his reaction to that?
He's also pretty brave. I mean, if I was president and I was talking in front of a lot of people, I would be really scared.
These kids know what's up. And here's the Democrat U.S. Senate candidate from Michigan.
I'm not feeling my best right now about where we are on Kamala Harris in a place like Michigan right now. We have her underwater in our polling.
This is one of the close Senate races, so you can be sure that the Democrat Senate candidate from Michigan has good polling on what voters are thinking in Michigan.
I'm not feeling my best right now about where we are on Kamala Harris in a place like Michigan right now. We have her underwater in our polling.
And I think Kamala might have lost the election right here with her performance on Hurricane Helene. Watch how she reacts to a question on if she has anything to say about the devastation in the Carolinas, in Georgia, Tennessee, and parts of Virginia created by Hurricane Helene. Most importantly, all the flooding and the aftermath of the hurricane.
Madam Vice President. This way. Thank you. Come on, this way. Let's go. This way. Thank you very much. Thank you. Is this being
Thank you.
This way. Thank you.
All right.
This way.
And of course, Georgia and North Carolina are key swing states in this election. We don't know at this point how many have died in Hurricane Helene and all the flooding that followed. More than 600 are the estimates. And this is Kamala's response on the hurricane to questions she gets. She just ignores them. By contrast, here we have Trump arriving at the hurricane disaster zone, delivering supplies.
Homes, hospitals, highways, and cars have been plunged underwater. Entire neighborhoods have been turned into lakes. Nobody's seen anything like it. And to every family that's been displaced here in Georgia and North Carolina, which has really been hit, we were going there also, and they don't have communication. They don't have anything right now. We're trying to. I just spoke to Elon. I'm getting him. We want to get Starlink hooked up because they have no communication whatsoever. And Elon will always come through. We know that. And so we're working on that, getting them hooked up. They asked me whether or not that would be possible. And we're going to try and get the Starlink in there as soon as possible because they have no communication.
I think the optics of this over the weekend for Biden and Harris have been pretty poor. I mean, North Carolina is underwater. These people are devastated and struggling. But you've got Biden at the beach and then saying, what do you want from me? I got on the phone while I was at the beach. And you've got Harris out raising money on the campaign and then taking a photo on a plane. Now, I remember George W. Bush was pilloried for having a photo taken from Air Force One. She's got a photo on a plane.
And I love this viral post by Trump. Kamala's telling us in her post that she's on the phone with FEMA, getting briefed on relief efforts and coordinating relief efforts and so on. And she positions herself in front of the presidential seal, pretending she's president. And Trump writes, another fake and staged photo from someone who has no clue what she's doing. You have to plug the cord into the phone for it to work. Kamala Harris is a hollow woman with zero leadership qualities and no brain. And I love how she answers this question about whether she actually worked at McDonald's. Listen to her answer.
Then I want to just ask you about a little job and a big job. Okay. The first one, just a fact check. Okay. Because your opponent
there is
almost
no little
every
job.
day. Okay.
There's no such thing as a little job.
Okay, fair. Because your opponent almost every day seems to be talking about this. So I just want to ask you yes or no. At any point in your life, have you served 2 all beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun, working at a McDonald's? Yes or no? That's it.
I have.
Okay. Now the other job. But
it was not a small job. Like, I did the fries. I mean, yes.
Okay, for a
but
small
I did.
period of time. But then let me ask about a big job.
Do you think she actually worked at McDonald's? And why didn't this propaganda news interviewer have a follow-up question like, can you tell me where the McDonald's was that you worked? Can you tell me when you worked there? Just tell us where that McDonald's actually was. And of course, you can tell from Kamala's answer here that she never worked at McDonald's. You don't do fries. You do everything. You cook the burgers, you cook the fries, you do it all. As anybody who's worked at McDonald's knows. Now for my quick assessment of the vice presidential debate between Tim Walz and J.D. Vance. I've been an advertising professional now for 4 decades, so I'll look at it from that angle, from the standpoint of presentation and overall packaging, not on the substance of the issues. First, Vance delivered a masterclass on how to debate. And I thought the best part was when he crushed the partisan moderators, when the moderators broke the rules of the debate that everyone had agreed to. The most important rule being the moderators would not interrupt the candidates with fake fact checks.
Thank you, Governor. And just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Well, Margaret, but
thank you, Senator. We have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important
we're
because
going to turn out of the economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
the rules were that you guys weren't going to fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That is the facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by our own leadership.
Thank you, Senator, for describing the legal process. We have so much to get to, Senator.
And of course, Vance was right. The moderators fact-checked was wrong. And this was one of Walz's worst moments in the debate, when he had no answer when asked about his lie about being in China, when China's military crushed the pro-democracy protesters in Tiananmen Square.
Governor Walz, you said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring of 1989. But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year. Can you explain that discrepancy?
Yeah, well, and to the folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska, town of 400, town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the streetlights come on, and I'm proud of that service. I joined the National Guard at 17, worked on family farms, and then I used the GI Bill to become a teacher, passionate about it, a young teacher. My first year out, I got the opportunity in the summer of '89 to travel to China. 35 years ago, be able to do that. I came back home and then started a program to take young people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams, we would take dancers, and we would go back and forth to China. The issue for that was to try and learn. Now, look, my community knows who I am. They saw where I was at. Look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect. And I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. Those same people elected me to Congress for 12 years. And in Congress, I was one of the most bipartisan people, working on things like farm bills that we got done, working on veterans benefits. And then the people of Minnesota were able to elect me to governor twice. So look, my commitment has been from the beginning to make sure that I'm there for the people, to make sure that I get this right. I will say more than anything, many times I will talk a lot. I will get caught up in the rhetoric. But being there, the impact it made, the difference it made in my life, I learned a lot about China. I hear the critiques of this. I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those trips with us. I guarantee you he wouldn't be praising Xi Jinping about COVID. And I guarantee you he wouldn't start a trade war that he ends up losing. So this is about trying to understand the world. It's about trying to do the best you can for your community, and then it's putting yourself out there and letting your folks understand what it is. My commitment, whether it be through teaching, which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier or was being a good member of Congress, those are the things that I think are the values that people care about.
Governor, just to follow up on that, the question was, can you explain the discrepancy?
All I said on this is I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just, that's what I've said. So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Thank you, Governor.
So he lied about this, lied about his military rank, lied about carrying weapons of war into battle. This guy lies about everything. But what people will remember about this debate was the way Walz looked and acted. He sort of reminded me of Chris Farley. Just not a serious person, completely out of his depth. He was frantically writing notes and fidgeting. And people are going to remember the split screen, how the two candidates looked. And here's Vance. Perfect look. Wasn't making a lot of wild faces like Kamala did in her debate with Trump. Vance looked commanding, looked like he belonged there. And here's Walz looking bug-eyed and fidgety. Just on optics alone, Vance crushed Walz. And optics is what people remember. J.D. Vance was smooth throughout, just a complete pro. And here's some of Vance.
Kamala Harris has a record, 250,000 more manufacturing jobs just out of the IRA.
May I respond to that?
Yes.
So appreciate that. So if you notice, what Governor Walz just did is he said, first of all, Donald Trump has to listen to the experts. And then when he acknowledged that the experts screwed up, he said, well, Donald Trump didn't do nearly as good of a job as the statistics
that's a
show
gross generalization.
that he did. So what Tim Walz is doing, and I honestly, Tim, I think you got a tough job here because you've got to play whack-a-mole. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver rising take-home pay, which of course he did. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver lower inflation, which of course he did. And then you simultaneously got to defend Kamala Harris's atrocious economic record, which has made gas, groceries, and housing unaffordable for American citizens. I was raised by a woman who would sometimes go into medical debt so that she could put food on the table in our household. I know what it's like to not be able to afford the things that you need to afford. We can do so much better. To all of you watching, we can get back to an America that's affordable again. We just got to get back to common sense economic principles.
I hope we have a conversation on health care then.
Senator, Governor.
Please.
Thank you. Margaret?
Andy uses some good visual imagery here with that whack-a-mole analogy. And here's some of the media reaction to the debate. Many thought Walz was as bad or even worse than Biden was in his debate with Trump in June.
There is no doubt in my mind, however Governor Walz did in terms of sincerity, that Vance won this debate.
Does Governor Walz have a problem with the truth? No.
They were talking at one point, Vance wanted to correct something about how Haitians got into this country. And he was right, and the moderators wouldn't let him correct it. It's very interesting.
But at the beginning, the two issues driving the campaign right now are Harris has a big deficit on the economy, Harris has a big deficit on immigration, and Republicans were happy tonight and Democrats a little bit nervous that on those two issues, Vance carried it.
J.D. Vance is much more experienced at this, at public speaking, at defending himself, at pivoting.
It's the audacity. I agree with you that we're in year 9 and no one knows how to cover the audacity. The audacity is that someone should have said, stop it, stop. Are you effing kidding me? And they should have dropped that F-bomb, right? I mean, they should have just, this is the debate. This may be the only chance people have to see the difference.
And here's Walz the day after the debate. Is this someone you want anywhere near the Oval Office, with his finger on the nuclear button? So Kamala's first major decision was to pick Tim Walz as her running mate, as her vice presidential pick. A total joke and embarrassment. She picked this guy instead of Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, who would have helped her win Pennsylvania, a state she needs. She decided not to pick Shapiro because he's Jewish, and that would have enraged her radical left base. Instead, she picked this total loser, this Tim Walz character, who is the radical left governor of Minnesota, which is not even a swing state. Walz is the most left-wing governor in the country. So this is a great window into Kamala's decision-making skills. She has no decision-making skills. She says she picked Walz out of a gut feeling. That is not how you pick your vice presidential running mate. Had she picked Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, she likely would have carried Pennsylvania. So she's throwing that state away. What a fiasco this decision was for her. And every focus group of undecided independent swing voters that I'm seeing are breaking bigly for Trump. Take a look at this.
Raise your hand if you think President Trump's policies on the economy would be better for your family personally.
And let's check how these black voters in the barbershop are voting.
Either voting for Donald Trump or considering it? For sure. A lot of my friends are obviously my age, so we're a little younger. We've only voted once, for a president. And Trump is kind of all we know. And they're kind of Trump and Biden. They're like, well, we were broke with Biden. We weren't with Trump. And that's
They were broke with Biden, but under Trump, they weren't. That's what's going to decide the election. CBS News went to a diner in Washoe County, Nevada, a county that Joe Biden carried by 4.5 points in 2020. And CBS could only find one Biden supporter in this diner, in a county that went for Joe Biden in 2020.
A restaurant, of the people willing to talk to us, we could only find one Harris supporter in every restaurant, and we left no stone unturned. I approached every single person. What issue is most important to you?
I'm extremely concerned about the border. Illegals, they gotta go.
People are coming here seeking asylum.
Baloney. They're coming here for the freebies. When people talk about immigration, they're thinking we're saying we don't want immigrants of any kind, and that's not what people are saying. People are saying that there are people who have come here legally. Why do they get pushed aside to allow people who have not even worked one day in our country, have not paid into the system?
I took my brisket and mac and cheese with me to catch Ken Lasker with a to-go order. How closely are you watching this election?
Oh, very closely.
He was the only Harris supporter we met at lunch, even though Washoe County has historically been pretty politically split.
The far-left New York Times conducted extensive conversations with a group of 13 independent, undecided swing voters. And out of the 13, 11 broke for Trump, while just 2 broke for Harris. This didn't make the New York Times happy. Meanwhile, let's see how Kamala is doing among labor union households. And let's see what these union workers are actually thinking in this forum that was conducted by MSNBC. MSNBC was not happy what they heard. I also like watching how the can't fold guys react to stuff because they're not all that political. They comment on all kinds of things, most having nothing to do with politics. They're most known for reacting to songs. So you're not getting a partisan political take from these guys. So let's watch these can't fold guys react as they listen to the answers from these union members in terms of what's important to them when it comes to the election.
Today, we are coming to you live from the crucial swing state of Michigan, where yesterday we spoke with union workers, a key voting bloc in the state, about what they care about and, just as importantly, what they're just not paying all that much attention to.
So, again, my name's Connor. But February 6th?
January 6th.
So I remember that day. I know he was the standing president. I'm not familiar with the charges that are being brought against him for that. I'm not following that charge for I know there's multiple court cases going on. I'm just not familiar with it.
And do you think that doesn't sound like it's going to be a factor in deciding who to vote for?
No.
If you're watching this show tonight, odds are you watch a lot of news.
The average person does not give a damn about January 6th. For years now, 4 years now, the media, the fake news has been telling us that January 6th was an insurrection, but how do you have an insurrection with no guns? And of course, everyone saw the police waving in the demonstrators, and most of them got arrested for just trespassing, but got years in prison for that. So everybody can see what's going on there. It's just the whole January 6th thing was a setup and a ruse, and it's just a propaganda talking point. Let's continue here.
We thank you for it. Odds are you know quite a bit about January 6th and the litany of criminal and civil cases brought against Donald Trump.
Litany of criminal cases.
But this election is likely to come down to just a few thousand
no one
voters
gives a damn
for whom
about
keeping up with political news is not a priority. So how do you reach this vanishingly small group of voters who don't fit into traditional political models, who don't conform to typical political profiles, who are frustratingly elusive, and who might end up determining this entire election?
make the economy better when you in office.
Yep.
Then they'll realize, just like they're realizing when Trump, the economy was good. I should vote for that guy. Not all that hoo-howling and all this red, black, white stuff they be doing. White supremacy, it is. None of that. When y'all in office, do good. Simple as that.
So as much as these undecided voters are unsure about the candidates, however undefined their decision-making process appears to be, you can see what issues are foremost in their minds in this critical swing county. But what is maybe just as interesting is what was not on the minds of those undecided voters. Issues that have received a ton of media attention in this state and in this election. Issues like abortion access and Donald Trump's lawlessness covered exhaustively by the national news media. Does anybody have any idea about what's happening in the federal courts relating to Donald Trump's the January 6th event and what's going on?
No one knows.
Okay, so when I say January 6th, what do you think?
Oh, I just remember seeing it on the news, like all the riots and stuff. Don't really know what it was about or what happened, though.
How did it make you feel when you saw it?
I don't know. I don't really feel any way about it. People showed their emotion, I guess.
Who here has been following the decisions from the Supreme Court? Raise your hands.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm seeing like only a handful. Who here knows what the Dobbs decision is?
One person.
One person. Okay, that's super interesting.
Shit. Money.
What about abortion? Reproductive choice. Is that something that you guys think about? Is it something that concerns you?
I think each side is a little too crazy. They need to meet in the middle.
What do you mean by that?
I think they go too much one way and then too much the other way.
So you think Democrats are too open-ended on abortion and Republicans are too restrictive?
Yep.
Okay. What about you? Is it something you think about?
Same as her.
Same as her?
I think there's a middle ground there.
Something you think about?
Yeah, these girls, that's pretty much where most people are on abortion. They like something in the middle. Something like what Europe has. In most European countries, there are no abortions after 15 weeks unless life of the mother is seriously threatened. And that has to be agreed to by two doctors. I think that's the law in France. I think it's the law in Sweden. I think Sweden, you actually have to apply to like a health board after 19 weeks to get an abortion. You have to actually get approval from the government to get an abortion after 19 weeks in Sweden. I believe that's the law. And that's probably where most Americans are. They want something in the middle, which is why overturning Roe versus Wade was a great thing, because it throws it back to the states. So you can have more pro-life laws in Mississippi and Alabama and the more conservative states. And if you don't want that, you can live in California or New York or one of the blue states. That's what federalism is all about. The states are supposed to do 95% of the governing in America.
Something you think about?
I don't know.
You don't have to? Well,
I don't really have an opinion on it.
Is it weird that she keep going up to men to ask them about that?
Everyone has an opinion. I understand she's trying to see what different
opinions is.
Yeah, make it seem like you asking union workers on abortion. Why was that?
They don't give a damn about none of that. January, none of that.
They trying to make sure that they money
$1,
saved.
$2, $3, $4, $5.
Yeah, they trying to make sure that money.
Yep, that's what people are interested in. They want to know how the economy is going to go. They want to know how much money they're going to have in their pocket. They're going to want to know if they can put food on the table, pay their rent, buy a house. They're not worried about if Trump is going to become a dictator.
Money saved, the economy's good, and they have a chance to live the American dream. I mean, I'm sure that's their number one thing. So any presidential candidate that's going to give them the best opportunity at that is going to be who they vote for. I don't understand why they bringing up all this other shit.
He's going to be a dictator. Well, he can't. That's the simplest answer is that. Like, that's just what the answer is. He can't be a dictator. So what are we talking about? Yeah, well, he can't.
Who here is voting for the first time? Is this anybody's first election? You guys back here. What's sort of made its way across your radar? Any stories or issues or positions?
Mostly just immigration.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? What about immigration have you been paying attention to?
There are thousands and thousands of illegal immigrants coming across the border every day, and the vice president has done minimal work to fix that, based on what I've seen. So I'd like that to change.
Do you feel like Donald Trump's going to be better on that issue?
Based on what we've seen on his first 4 years, I do believe that he will be better on that, yeah.
Are you leaning towards Trump right now?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there anything that Vice President Harris could do at this point to change your mind?
Not particularly, no. Unless she changes her stance completely on fixing the border. That's no.
This is your first election?
Yeah, it is.
And have you been paying attention to stuff?
Some things, but as of right now, it's kind of hard to know what is true and what's false as far as both parties are concerned.
Like, what issue matters to you the most?
Definitely are issues concerning democracy and what was discussed before the border.
What about immigration concerns you?
The influx in illegal immigration is affecting a lot more than just the people, but our economy, we're losing jobs for the people who live here. People are, running out of work, and in return, it's making life as a whole for the country harder.
Do you feel like one candidate or the other is better on that issue?
Like I said, I don't know what to believe from what I'm seeing from multiple news outlets and what comes across my news feed and whatnot. So I'm not super opinionated either way.
How do you think you're going to ultimately decide? I know we talked to one gentleman who said, I think I'm just going to kind of go with my heart on election day.
As the election comes a little closer, I think the more I see and the more truth that ends up coming out, I'll be able to make a more educated.
He voting for Trump. He didn't want to say it.
How are regular citizens just sounding smarter than what these people do on the media, bro?
Well, the media, we know that, bro.
They do, bro.
Everyday people just sound smarter because it's a real opinion. You know what I'm saying? They're giving you really what they think. And we're everyday people. So we just hear it and we're like, well, damn, that's what we think. On the media, they're going to push one way or the other, and they're going to push their opinion and shit like that. You know what I'm saying? So obviously it's like, well,
they have to change that.
Relate to me. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know.
Because if they continue down this route, they're destroyed, bro. Because, they're just not credible anymore. And it still seems like they are, because you see, these people just don't watch the news, bro. Like, people don't watch the news.
Do you think the housing is an issue?
Yes, I actually just recently purchased a home. So, yes, I do think that it is too high. It's just the cost of a livable, move-in ready home nowadays is just absurd, I think, in my opinion, to where before I feel like you could buy a house for a reasonable price and it not have to have a ton of work put into it.
I just recently purchased a house as well, and this house has gone up $50,000 in the past 5 years. So, just looking at the prices in the past 5 years, why has it gone up so much? What can we do to bring it back down to what it was?
We're fortunate enough, our wages been able to keep up with inflation, but a lot of people, they haven't been so fortunate, and they have to choose between paying bills, buying food, putting food on the table, so I think
this
that's
is not
play a
going
big
well for
factor in this
MSNBC.
election.
This is
like
not
he
what
said,
they were
if
hoping
you
to
can't
hear.
afford to have a house or buy your family food, then nothing else really matters.
They voting for Trump.
They're cooked.
All of them basically voting
It
for
sounds
Trump.
like they might go for Trump.
They're cooked.
If these are the voters that are supposed to decide the election, I think we know which way they're gonna go based on these answers.
Yeah.
Let's not sit here and BS. Like, at the end of the day, we need to make America livable and the American dream accessible to those who are born and raised here. And that's just the bottom line. I don't understand why it needs to get any deeper than that.
Yeah.
Based on this, I think we know which way the election is headed. Also, the best and most respected political model out there now is giving Donald Trump a 55.2% chance of winning the election. And this is the model created by the Daily Mail in the United Kingdom. And they're not going to be as biased as the propaganda media polls here in the United States, because people in the UK don't have as much of a stake in the election as Americans have. So they're not going to be as partisan. And I think this model really is trying to get it right. And by the way, this 55.2% chance of Trump winning the election is a 9-point improvement for Trump over what it was 3 weeks ago, according to this model. And you can see back here around the time of the debate, shortly after Kamala was installed as the nominee for the Democrat Party, and she had this media-created honeymoon period, this model had Kamala up by 5 over Trump. I actually think Trump did fine in that debate, especially because it was 3 against 1, 3 against Trump. And Kamala didn't have to do anything in that debate. She could just stand there and let the so-called ABC News moderators do her work for her.
Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But Vice President Harris, you did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question.
Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi.
I said that.
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say
sarcastically. You know that.
And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them Republican.
No judge looked at it.
You heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan.
Mr. President, you have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being uselessly, people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more. I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left, I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's... Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up. Just to clarify in the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
But as I said in my video right after the debate, I actually thought Trump won the debate with this.
What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country.
And this is all anyone remembers from the debate. And the young people on TikTok loved it.
They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. Eat the cat. Eat the cat. They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. Eat the cat. Eat the cat. They're eating the dogs. They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. Eat the cat. Eat the cat. Eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. Eat the cat. Eat Springfield. They're eating the dogs. The people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
And now the Daily Mail model has Trump pulling away from Kamala with a 55.2% chance of winning. And what makes the Daily Mail model best is the amount of data it uses. First, it begins with the fundamentals model. It tries to predict how many votes each candidate will get based on historical data. And this model has two parts, the long-term model and the short-term model. The long-term model uses data from the past 76 years, factoring in vote totals, economic data, and polling data, going back 76 years. And the model gives more weight to recent years when the political environment has become more polarized. And an important factor in this model is consumer confidence, which is a big predictor of elections. Here's what the consumer confidence chart looks like going back over the years and decades. Here, for example, you can see the consumer confidence index crash as a result of the 2008 financial crisis. So obviously Barack Obama was going to win given that environment. And you can see right here that consumer confidence under the Trump presidency, was very high right before the pandemic. And Trump surely would have won that election had the pandemic not happened, had not this once-in-a-lifetime apocalyptic event occurred. So obviously the consumer confidence index crashed during the pandemic. Then it went up right after the pandemic era was over, but it was too late to help Trump in 2020. However, the consumer confidence index has been trending down steadily under Harris-Biden. So that's obviously bad for Harris, even though the Harris campaign and the propaganda media are trying to present Harris as a fresh new face. Nope, she's been in power for the last almost 4 years. Not a new face. The Daily Mail model then feeds in data from all the respected publicly available polls, giving more weight to polls of likely voters than registered voters, and low weight to online polls where the identity of the participant can't be accurately determined. And then accounting for all of these factors, the UK Daily Mail model arrives at its conclusion by running a simulated election 8,000 times. And that's how it comes up with Trump having a 55.2% chance of winning now. In terms of the sheer amount of data this model uses, this model is the best. But here's the catch. It basically comes down to Pennsylvania, which this model now has almost in the red for Trump, red meaning Republican, but still in the toss-up range. This model gives Trump a 58% chance of winning Pennsylvania, which to my mind means a 58% chance of winning the election, because if Trump wins Pennsylvania, that means there's basically a 99.9% chance that Trump wins the election overall. Michigan and Wisconsin are also in the toss-up range, though tipped slightly in favor of Harris. And for Arizona, North Carolina, and Georgia, also considered toss-up states in most polls, this model has it pretty solidly red for Trump, So then that would mean Trump just needs to carry one of the 3 Rust Belt battleground states, Pennsylvania or Michigan or Wisconsin. If he can just carry one of these Rust Belt states, he wins, assuming he carries Georgia, Arizona, and North Carolina, which he likely will if he carries one of these Rust Belt states, which historically lean Democrat. Trump was able to win these states, these Rust Belt states, in 2016, but Republicans have not been winning these states for decades. Trump was able to win these Rust Belt states by transforming the Republican Party into a America First populist party of the working class. Mitt Romney and John McCain, for example, just got crushed in these states. So it's looking better and better for Trump with each passing day, which is why Team Kamala desperately wants another debate. And Trump is saying no more debates. If Team Kamala really thought she was leading, they would not be desperately calling for another debate, which would be a 3rd debate for Trump. I should also add that the most recent data that's being used by the Daily Mail model is from September 23rd. And since then, polls have been trending in Donald Trump's direction. So Trump's odds of winning are likely improving since then. For example, here are the most recent polls from Pennsylvania. Fox News has Trump up 1. Emerson has Trump up 1. Alice Intel has Trump up 3 in Pennsylvania. Insider Advantage has Trump up 2. Trafalgar has Trump up 3 in Pennsylvania. And here's a data point I like. It's the party affiliation poll that Gallup has been conducting for decades. Gallup has the Republican Party leading now by 3 points. This chart goes back to 1992. The Republican Party has never led on this chart going back to 1992. The Democrat Party has been leading on this metric for decades, until now. And here's another great data point for Trump. He has gained 19 points with Hispanics since 2020.
We see every 4 years the Latino vote becomes a bigger and bigger share of the overall electorate. Well, among Latinos, our poll shows Kamala Harris leading Donald Trump 54 to 40%. Now, for some context, this is a little bit better for Democrats than they were doing among Hispanics when Joe Biden was their candidate. But I think the bigger story here is historically, 54 to 40 now is a 14-point advantage for the Democrats. Take a look back at the last 3 presidential elections, and these were the results results in the exit polls among Hispanic voters. That 14, look at that cut there, almost 20 points less than just 4 years ago. And 4 years ago, we were saying Donald Trump had made inroads with Hispanic voters. This suggests that that has continued apace.
Also important to note that voting patterns vary depending on the type of Hispanic voters we're talking about. For example, Trump carries 62% of the Cuban and Venezuelan vote in Florida. And Hispanics from blue states like California tend to vote more Democrat than Hispanics from red states. You might remember that Trump carried the Hispanic vote in Texas along the border with Mexico. Hispanics on the voter like Trump because they see the border crisis up close and personal. And also Hispanics that arrive from south of Mexico, places like Central America, Venezuela, Nicaragua, where they come from collapsed societies, economic systems, and political systems, Hispanics from those countries actually tend to vote quite conservative, much more conservative than Hispanics from Mexico. And Trump is doing much better among black voters than he was in 2020 or 2016. And he actually did much better among black voters than a Republican like Mitt Romney or John McCain. Trump's been making steady headway among black voters. And according to a new poll just out by the NAACP, Trump is now getting 25% of black males under the age of 50. 25% of black males under the age of 50 say they are voting for Donald Trump. So that's just insanely good for Trump. Democrats need 90% of the black vote to win, especially in states like North Carolina, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, where there are a lot of black voters. And according to Pew Research, Trump is getting 17% of the black male vote overall, all ages. And he's getting 9% of the black female vote. Now compare that to 2020 when Trump got just 12% of the black male vote and 5% of the black female vote, which is still much better than what Republicans usually get, much better than what Mitt Romney or John McCain got, for example. So now Trump is doing 5 points better among black men and 3 points better among black females, according to Pew, better than 2020, which was better than 2016. So Trump is doing better among black voters with every election cycle. Trump is also winning the Catholic vote now, according to Pew Research, by 5%. Joe Biden won the Catholic vote in 2020. And Catholics are a huge voting bloc. About 20% of the electorate, about 1 in 5 voters are Catholic. And the Catholic vote generally divides down the middle, so whichever candidate wins the Catholic vote is pretty much certain to win the election. And the Catholic vote is big in those Midwestern industrial Rust Belt states. Kamala is doing horribly among Catholics because she's radical on the abortion issue. She's for abortion up until the moment of birth, or even after birth if the baby happens to be born alive in a botched abortion. By every data point, compared to 2020 and 2016, Trump is doing better among every demographic group. Trump is even winning by 9 points among white women, according to Pew Research. Wait, I thought women hate Trump. That's what we're told by the media. And not helping Kamala at all are her performances that she's giving in these softball interviews. Propaganda interviews that are designed to boost Harris. Check some of this out. All Kamala has to do before she goes into these softball, puffball propaganda interviews is memorize some lines. She knows she's going to get no tough follow-up questions, but she can't even do that.
But still, there are lots of Americans who don't see themselves in your plans. For those who say these policies aren't for me, what do you say to them?
Well, if you are hardworking, if you have the dreams and the ambitions and the aspirations of what I believe you do, you're in my plan. You know, I have to tell you, I really love and am so energized by what I know to be the spirit and character of the American people. We have ambition. We have aspirations. We have dreams.
Is the price of groceries still too high? Yes. Do we have more work to do? Yes. And I will tell you, I do believe that I offer a new generation of leadership for our country that is about, in particular, turning the page on an era that sadly has shown us attempts by some to incite fear, to create division in our country.
We really would love to know what your plan is to help lower the cost of living.
Yeah, first of all, thank you both for being here. And yours is a story I hear around the country as I travel. And in terms of both rightly having the right to have aspirations and dreams and ambitions for your family, and working hard and finding that the American dream is, for this generation and so many recently, far more elusive than it's been. And we need to deal with that. And there are a number of ways. One is bringing down the cost of everyday necessities, including groceries.
We really would love to know what your plan is to help lower the cost of living.
Some of the work is going to be through what we do in terms of giving benefits and assistance to state and local governments around transit dollars, and looking holistically at the connection between that and housing, and looking holistically at the incentives we in the federal government can create for local and state governments to actually engage in planning in a holistic manner that includes prioritizing affordable housing for working people.
And then these interviews are edited to make her look better than she actually is. Yeah, she was actually worse than what you saw her. This is the best they could pull out of the interview, and that's what they aired. And at this Black Journalist event, I love how these hosts react to her performance at the end.
But polling shows that some black men, particularly young black men, are considering voting for Donald Trump, and they see him as better for the economy. What is your message to young black male voters who feel left out of this economy, and how can your economic policies materially change their lives?
So I appreciate the spirit of the question, but I'll tell you, I've often been asked this question in a way that I've had to respond by first saying that I think it's very important to not operate from the assumption that black men are in anybody's pocket. Black men are like any other voting group. You got to earn their vote. So I'm working to earn the vote, not assuming I'm going to have it because I am black.
But in cities like Philadelphia, handguns are responsible for most homicides and violent crime. How will you address the issue of the use of handguns? Because a push for an assault weapons ban only addresses a significant but small part of the problem.
But we do need an assault weapons ban. Assault weapons are designed to kill a lot of human beings quickly,
yes,
and have no place,
ban,
have no place. I'm going to get to it.
Yes.
It's about saying that it is just reasonable to want reasonable gun safety laws that say we should do background checks, that we ought to know. It's just reasonable. You might want to know before someone can buy a lethal weapon if they've been found by a court to be a danger to themselves or others. You might just want to know.
And respectfully, we do understand that. Yes.
They do.
But in many instances, those handguns aren't even bought lawfully. Yes.
Which is why I also have been very adamant for years. In fact, I myself protested at a gun show probably 10, 15 years ago. And so you are exactly right that a lot of homicides, for example, a good number of them, I don't have the statistic in front of my mind, are committed with illegally purchased guns. And that's why we need to address each entry point in the issue, including universal background checks, closing the gun show loophole, and what we need to do as a general matter to focus not only on reaction to crime, but prevention of crime. So you're raising a very important issue that has many facets, including what we need to do in terms of reasonable gun safety laws, and what we need to do around crime prevention, what we need to do around crime deterrence. But listen, I have personally prosecuted homicide cases. I have held the hands of mothers who have come to me crying, who have said, I only want to talk to Kamala, because they knew when they sat down, I would treat them with the dignity and respect that they were entitled and due about the loss of their child, often their son, to gun violence and the need to take it seriously. And we must take it seriously. In every way, understanding it's not just about a soundbite. It's about a comprehensive approach that deals with the tragedy of, to your point, everyday gun violence in America. It's real. It has had a profound impact in terms of trauma that for the most part has gone undiagnosed and untreated. The trauma that exists in communities around the violence of losing their children, losing a brother, losing a father, an uncle. All of that must be addressed, and we have to have a holistic response to it.
Are there things we haven't thought about yet? Because every time we bring up this issue of gun violence, universal background checks comes up and a ban on assault weapons. Are there other solutions that you're also thinking about that will get at this issue?
Absolutely. For example, part of what we did with, there is the work that we need to do that is about putting resources into communities around violence prevention. I've been a big advocate of that for years, which includes what we need to do around putting resources into community-based intervention that is not just requiring on the good people in the community to volunteer to do the intervention, but actually paying people to do it because it's a full-time job. It's about understanding what we need to do to, again, understand that, to your point, we have to have a holistic response to this issue and prioritize it instead of reacting to the tragedy that, sadly, they are too predictable. Let's all agree, enough of that. There are very few solutions that we haven't thought of. We need to put the resources into them. But you're asking
Yes.
about...
I'm asking specifically about handguns.
Look at the look on their faces. These hosts can't believe what they just witnessed. Just mindless babble from Kamala. Kamala's cognitive abilities actually appear to be way worse than Joe's.
She did her usual thing as well, of course, pointing out the complete obvious.
At least Joe probably has some lucid moments, perhaps before noon. Can probably answer some basic policy questions, before noon if you catch him early. Kamala is a complete cipher. There's just no light on in her brain whatsoever. Tumbleweeds blowing through her brain. And it appears that the fake news propaganda complex can't prop her up, at least not entirely. For example, look at CNN's Dana Bash here in that puffball interview that she did with Kamala, where Dana Bash actually gives Kamala multiple choice answers to her questions that Kamala could just pick from, but Kamala fumbles even that, can't even pick from one of the answers that Dana Bash gave her.
Generally speaking, how should voters look at some of the changes that you've made, that you've explained some of here in your policy? Is it because you have more experience now and you've learned more about the information? Is it because you were running for president in a Democratic primary? And should they feel comfortable and confident that what you're saying now is going to be your policy moving forward?
Dana, I think the most important and most significant aspect of my policy perspective and decisions is my values have not changed. You mentioned the Green New Deal. I have always believed, and I have worked on it, that the climate crisis is real, that it is an urgent matter to which we should apply metrics that include holding ourselves to deadlines around time.
That's how stupid Kamala Harris is. And that's what I've been saying since 2020, that Joe Biden is actually the Democrat Party's best candidate, for the simple reason that Biden would perform much better in the Rust Belt than Kamala. Despite Joe's dementia, he would perform much better among the working class. I also have to believe that the more the low-info voters learn about how radical left Kamala really is, the more the undecideds will move toward Trump. And, there's only like 3% of the electorate that is undecided. But they will decide the election. These low-info people, these people who literally know nothing. And plus, Kamala actually is a communist, even though a very stupid one.
Equality suggests often everybody should get the same thing. Well, that often assumes everybody started out in the same place, as opposed to equity, which is everyone should end up in the same place. We have always fought for equality, but now we are also talking much more rightly about equity. understanding that we must be clear-eyed about the fact that, yes, we want everyone to get an equal amount. That sounds right. But not everyone starts out from the same place. Some people start out on first base, some people start out on third base. And if the goal is truly about equality, it has to be about a goal of saying everybody should end up in the same place. And since we didn't start in the same place, some folks might need more. Equitable distribution.
This is the very definition of communism. Everyone ending up in the same place. Well, everyone except Kamala and those in charge of the government. That's how it works under communism. The government gets it all, or almost all of it, and you get very little. The government then just sprinkles out some crumbs. Enough for you to survive, barely. Well, maybe. And then, of course, we had Kamala cheering the burning down of America's cities in 2020 during the anti-police riots. She was literally cheering on the rioters.
And I want to make clear that I know that there are protests still happening in major cities across the United States.
That's right. But they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop. And this is a movement, I'm telling you. They're not going to stop. And everyone beware, because they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop before Election Day in November, and they're not going to stop after Election Day. And everyone should take note of that on both levels, that they're not going to let up, and they should not.
And notice here, she says, beware and take note. She's actually threatening the American people with this. She's threatening to send the rioters to your house if you don't go along with her communist program.
I know that your mom was very politically active. What did you learn from her?
I learned that the greatest movements that we have seen in recent history in our country, but probably since the beginning, have been born out of protest. Have been born out of understanding the power of the people to take to the streets and force their government to address what is wrong, the inequities, the inequalities, the unfairness. So when I made a decision to become a prosecutor, it was a conscious decision, which was to go inside the system and have some leverage there to effectuate change. I say that to say this. The only way we're going to truly achieve change is when there are people in the system who are willing or pushing to do it, and when there are those folks who are outside of the system demanding it. I am very clear that some of the success that we've been able to achieve around criminal justice reform would not have happened in recent years were it not for Black Lives Matter. And the intensity and the brilliance of that movement. These movements provide a counterforce to get us to where we need to be.
And Kamala helped raise money to bail out the anti-police rioters. In fact, her link raising money to bail out the anti-police rioters is still up on her Twitter or X page. A link to the far-left, radical Minnesota Freedom Fund. Her post urges people to chip in now to the Minnesota Freedom Fund to help post bail for those protesting on the ground in Minnesota, end quote. And one of those she helped bail out was a man named George Howard, who went on to shoot and kill a 38-year-old man named Damian Martinez Ortiz. Just shot him dead on the highway, this father. Another person Kamala helped bail out through her fundraising activities for the Minnesota Freedom Fund was Sean Michael Tillman of St. Paul. Tillman went on to shoot a man at a train stop with 6 bullets, killing his victim, a man by the name of Dimitri Ellis Strong, who just happened to be standing in the wrong place at the wrong time. These are the kinds of criminals that Kamala Harris helped bail out with her fundraising activities for this radical left anti-police pro-rioter group called the Minnesota Freedom Fund. According to the Boston Globe, the Minnesota Freedom Fund also bailed out a man accused of robbing 5 women and another facing 3 counts of child rape. Now, how stupid is Kamala and her campaign for leaving this post up on her X page years later while she's running for president? Maybe they think if they took it down, this would just draw more attention to it. And here were her comments on the border before she changed all of her positions after she was installed as the Democrat nominee for president.
It is wrong to somehow suggest that an undocumented immigrant is a criminal.
Police have tracked down a killer whose crimes spanned the country. Rachel Marin was dragged from a hiking trail in Maryland where she was raped and murdered.
Take a look at this. In the Rio Grande Valley, where I was yesterday at the river crossing, just hundreds on the bank coming hour after hour. I have been multiple times to that very point, and I can tell you it's certainly in full force right now.
Police say Brandon Ortiz Vite used a handgun he bought illegally to shoot Ruby Garcia multiple times on Friday.
Being an undocumented immigrant is not a crime. I know what a crime looks like. An undocumented immigrant is not a criminal.
Prime suspect charged in Laken Riley's murder was 26-year-old Jose Antonio Ibarra. He illegally entered the United States back in 2022.
Have the courage to reject that term, illegal alien.
What is your position on San Francisco as a sanctuary city?
I support our sanctuary law.
Should Minnesota be a sanctuary state?
If the definition of that is that the federal government enforces immigration law and local law enforcement enforces local law, then yes.
Should cities be allowed to be sanctuary cities?
Yes.
An undocumented immigrant is not a criminal.
An undocumented immigrant is not a criminal.
A Texas grand jury indicted Rafael Govea Romero. He's accused of attacking 16-year-old Lisbeth Medina by repeatedly hitting her head and stabbing her.
An undocumented immigrant is not a criminal. An undocumented immigrant is not a criminal.
One of the biggest revelations when it comes to our southern border was revealed yesterday. We already knew that over 250 people on the FBI's terror watch list were caught at our southern border over the past 3 years under President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. But yesterday we learned for the very first time that 99 illegal immigrants on that terror watch list were released into the country and another 34 are still in DHS custody. What possible explanation from the Department of Homeland Security could there be for releasing these people into our country?
And I'm sure you remember Joe Biden calling on migrants to surge the border.
I would, in fact, make sure that we immediately surge to the border. All those people are seeking asylum.
That's what he wanted them to do. He wanted them to surge the border, surge into the country. 10 million migrants surging in at the invitation of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And of course, Harris-Biden ended construction of Trump's border wall, ended his Remain in Mexico policy for asylum seekers, and canceled 94 of President Trump's border security measures. Harris-Biden then began transporting millions of these migrants to battleground states, battleground swing states. And if elected, Harris will just fast-track these people to citizenship so they can vote, at which point a Republican will never again win the presidency. America will just become a one-party communist state, kind of along the lines of communist China. There'll be no free speech. There'll be no real elections. And of course, the elite media and the New York Times is already calling for an end to the Constitution. They see the Constitution as the problem. The Constitution is slowing down their path to permanent power. Among the more than 10 million migrants who have poured across our southern border under Harris-Biden, 15,000 of these migrants have been convicted of sex assault in their own countries. Convicted of sex assault in their own countries before getting here. 15,000 of them. And 600,000 migrants have criminal convictions in their own countries before getting here. So there's no screening process, no vetting process at all under Harris-Biden. They just wave them in. Also, these are just the criminals we know about. The three most important issues to voters, according to all the polls, the economy, number one, Kamala's open border, number two, and out-of-control crime. Much of the crime by these new migrants, including the 600,000 known criminals and 15,000 sexual assaulters. These are the kinds of people that Harris-Biden have let in. Kamala received 0 votes for president in a Democrat primary, received 0 votes in 2020, had to drop out before the Iowa caucuses because she was performing so poorly in the polls. She received 0 votes in 2024, but she was installed anyway. My theory on Joe Biden's disastrous performance in the debate was that he was over-medicated on purpose. They wanted him out. That was the plan. That's why they held that first debate so early, in June. They've never had a presidential debate that early before. Presidential debates are held in September and October. I think September is a good time for debates because you want the debate to happen before the first votes are cast. And this plan to get Joe Biden out, is why CNN actually conducted a fair debate in June. They were part of the plot to push old Joe out the door. The Democrat leadership, and most importantly, the mega donors to the Democrat Party, knew that Joe was probably going to lose. So they decided to roll the dice with Kamala out of desperation. And they're counting on the propaganda media complex to protect Kamala. And of course, the propaganda media are doing their best to do that. But I think in the end, that she's actually going to do worse, far worse than what Joe would have done. She has absolutely no appeal with the working class. She's a brainless sock puppet of the radical left.
You're considered the most liberal United States senator.
Somebody said that, and it actually was Mike Pence on the debate stage. But
yeah, well, actually, the nonpartisan GovTrack has rated you as the most liberal senator.
And yeah, I am a radical. I do believe that we need to get radical about what we are doing and take it seriously.
Right.
You know, we have to stay woke. Like, everybody needs to be woke. And you can talk about if you're the wokest or woker, but just stay more woke than less woke.
Yeah. And when we all sing happy tunes and sing Merry Christmas and wish each other Merry Christmas, these children are not going to have a Merry Christmas. How dare we speak Merry Christmas? How dare we?
So vote early. Do not wait until Election Day to vote, because 12% of folks who intend to vote on Election Day end up not voting. Something comes up that prevents them from voting, or the machines just happen to break on Election Day in the Republican precincts, as happened in Maricopa County, Arizona in 2020. We saw that happen, and we saw these voters give up on voting and actually leave the voting location. So vote early and bring 5 like-minded people with you to vote, friends or family members. And check out my book on Bitcoin, A Beginner's Guide, your off-ramp from the corrupt political system and protection from economic collapse. If all hell breaks loose here and we become a communist dictatorship, you're going to want some Bitcoin. Bitcoin is unconfiscatable, uncensorable money. Bitcoin is the Second Amendment for your money. Bitcoin allows you to be your own bank. And there will never be more than 21 million Bitcoins for 8 billion people.